The night ripped apart. Muzzle flashes stitched incandescent patterns across the besieged walls of Firebase Kestrel, each burst a prelude to the thud of rounds hitting sandbags and flesh. Bullets whined like angry hornets, their sound a constant, high-pitched scream that drowned out the shouts of dying men. A coordinated ambush had slammed into the outpost with the force of a tidal wave, and the command structure was crumbling. The enemy's lead sniper, a ghost perched in the jagged rocks 1,000 meters out, was decapitating their leadership with surgical precision. One shot, one kill. The captain, gone. The comms officer, silenced mid-sentence. Now, every soldier who dared to raise their head became another target in the ghost's macabre gallery. Pinned down in the wreckage of a supply depot, her face streaked with grime and cordite, Private Cora Valerius watched the chaos through a jagged hole in the wall. She was a quartermaster, a clerk. Her job was counting bullets, not firing them. But the depot's designated marksman now lay still beside her, his state-of-the-art rifle a silent monument to his last moments. Her hands, trembling but steady, closed around the cold steel of the weapon. She knew this rifle. Her father had taught her on one just like it before the war took him. She checked the chamber, the weight of it feeling like a memory, like destiny. Peering through the high-powered scope, she bypassed the frantic skirmishes below and scanned the dark ridge. There. A flicker of movement. A glint of glass. She had him. The ghost. An impossible shot, across a valley swept by machine gun fire, with a wind that could carry a bullet a meter off course. Taking it meant exposing herself. Missing it meant a death sentence. Her finger tightened on the trigger, the world narrowing to the crosshairs and the phantom in the rocks. Will she fire the shot that saves them all? Where are you watching from? The heartland of the USA, the bustling cities of India, the historic towns of the UK, or the sunny shores of Goa? Drop your location in the comments below. Let us know what resilience means to you, and don't forget to like and share to honor all those who serve. The world held its breath in the space between heartbeats. Cora exhaled slowly, a plume of vapor disappearing into the cold night. The teachings of her father echoed in her mind, not as words, but as pure instinct. Windage, elevation, the subtle drop of the earth itself over 1,000 meters. She wasn't a quartermaster anymore. She was the tip of a spear. The trigger broke with a clean, crisp click that was utterly lost in the cacophony of the battle. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, a brutal but familiar kiss. She didn't wait to see the result. She was already moving, scrambling away from the firing position as retaliatory rounds chewed through the space she had just occupied. Out on the ridge, the enemy sniper's world dissolved into a splash of red against dark rock. The ghost was gone. The relentless, methodical execution of Kestrel's leadership stopped as suddenly as it had begun. A void opened in the enemy's assault, a moment of confusion that the beleaguered defenders desperately needed. The tide of the firefight began to turn, not into a victory, but a stalemate. Hope, a currency more precious than ammunition, began to circulate through the trenches again. When the first streaks of dawn painted the horizon in bruised shades of purple and gray, the silence was more deafening than the battle had been. The counter-assault from the main operating base had arrived, a column of armored vehicles churning up dust, their presence scattering the last of the attackers. At the center of the now secure firebase stood Colonel Riker, a man carved from granite and fury. His gaze swept over the carnage, his face an unreadable mask of command. "Who hit that target?" he demanded, his voice a low growl that cut through the exhaustion. "The sniper on the ridge." "Who took him out?" His second-in-command, Major Devlin, stepped forward, his uniform suspiciously clean. "One of my men, sir." "A brave sacrifice." "We're still confirming the ID." Riker's eyes, cold as chips of ice, narrowed. "I don't want a confirmation of a sacrifice, Major. I want the name of the marksman who made a 1-in-a-million shot under suppressive fire." A grizzled medic, Sergeant Morales, spat a wad of tobacco juice near Devlin's polished boots. It wasn't one of his boys, sir. He gestured with his chin towards the ruined supply depot. The shot came from there. From the clerk, all eyes turned towards the depot, where Cora was methodically field-stripping the marksman's rifle, her movements precise and automatic. She looked up, her young face smudged with dirt, her eyes holding the ancient weariness of a veteran. Riker strode towards her, his boots crunching on spent casings. He stopped before her, a towering figure of authority. "You're the quartermaster?" Cora simply nodded, her hands never ceasing their work. "Private Valerius, sir," Devlin scoffed audibly. "Sir, with all due respect, it's impossible. She's a supply clerk. A woman. The chaos must be causing confusion." Riker ignored him completely, his focus locked on Cora. He pointed to the rifle. "You made that shot?" She finally paused, meeting his gaze without fear. "Someone had to, sir." A silence fell over the command group, thick and heavy. The colonel stared at the small, unassuming private, seeing not a clerk, but the cold, unwavering focus he'd only ever seen in the most elite operators. In that moment, he didn't see her rank or her gender. He saw a weapon. And he had a war to win. "Pack your gear, Private," Riker commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You're with me." Major Devlin's face contorted with disbelief and fury. "Sir, you can't be serious. She's not combat certified." "Regulations are clear." Riker turned on him, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Regulations didn't save this firebase tonight, Major. A soldier did. And I will use any soldier who can get the job done." He turned back to Cora, whose expression remained unchanged. "You're no longer counting bullets, Valerius. From now on, you're going to make every single one count." He walked away, leaving Devlin fuming and the surrounding soldiers staring in stunned silence. Cora finished cleaning the rifle, her hands moving with a purpose that felt both new and terrifyingly familiar. She was being pulled from the shadows, the quiet life of logistics she had chosen, into the blinding glare of a world she had only ever heard about in her father's stories. Sergeant Morales approached her cautiously, a field dressing in his hand. "You got a name besides Valerius?" he asked, his tone gruff but laced with a newfound respect. "Cora," she replied, her voice quiet. He grunted, dabbing a cut on her cheek she hadn't even noticed. "Well, Cora. Welcome to the war." The transition was brutal. Colonel Riker didn't ease her in, he threw her into the crucible. She was flown to a black site training facility, a place that didn't officially exist, populated by men who were more legend than soldier. They were Riker's personal unit, the Ghosts. They looked at her with open skepticism, their hardened faces betraying their thoughts: a clerk, a woman, a mistake. The training regimen was designed to break the strongest men. Forced marches with full packs that left her muscles screaming, close-quarters combat drills that left her bruised and gasping, tactical simulations that pushed her mind to its absolute limit. Physically, she was always a step behind the hulking operators. But on the firing range, she was a goddess. Every weapon she touched felt like an extension of her own body. Pistols, carbines, heavy sniper systems, it didn't matter. She never missed. Her groupings were so tight they looked like a single, ragged whole. The Ghosts stopped smirking. They started watching. Riker observed everything from a distance, his expression impassive. He paired her with Sergeant Morales, Grizz, who had been transferred with her, his pragmatic medical skills as valuable as any rifle. Grizz became her shadow, pushing her when she faltered, wrapping her sprained ankles, and offering silent encouragement through a shared canteen of water. "He's trying to break you," Grizz muttered one night as they huddled by a small fire. "Wants to see if that shot was a fluke or if there's real steel under there." Cora stared into the flames, her body aching. "And what do you think?" Grizz took a long drink. "I think steel gets forged in fire. Just try not to melt." Her real test came during a live-fire exercise. A hostage scenario in a sprawling, multi-level shoot house. Major Devlin had arrived to observe, his presence a cold weight of disapproval. The objective was to neutralize 5 targets and rescue the hostage without any collateral damage. Cora was assigned the overwatch position, tasked with taking out 2 snipers positioned in high windows. The team breached. Gunshots echoed from within the structure. Tango 1 down, a voice crackled over the comms. Then, chaos. Multiple hostiles. We're pinned. The intel was bad. Devlin, watching the monitors in the command tent, allowed a small, grim smile to touch his lips. I told you she wasn't ready, Colonel. This is what happens when you ignore protocol. Riker's jaw was tight. Valerius, what's your status? Cora's voice came back, impossibly calm. Targets acquired. I have a solution. Before Riker could respond, the sharp crack of her rifle echoed twice in quick succession. On the monitors, 2 of the red icons representing enemy combatants blinked out. Inside the shoot house, 2 targets in elevated positions dropped simultaneously. But she wasn't done. Grizz, she said over the comms, her voice low and urgent. The west wall of the main hall is thin plasterboard. Tell Ghost Lead to fire 3 meters left of the doorway. The primary target is using the hostage as a shield behind it. A moment of hesitation. It was a blind shot, based on nothing but her intuition. Do it, Riker commanded into his own mic. The team leader inside complied. A burst of automatic fire tore through the wall. The final red icon on the monitor vanished. Hostage secure, Ghost Lead reported, his voice filled with awe. Target eliminated. How in the hell did she know? Back in the command tent, Devlin's face was pale. Riker looked at the monitor, then at Devlin. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The clerk had just outthought and outshot his entire command structure. Cora had proven that the fire hadn't melted her, it had tempered her into something sharp, something lethal. Riker's gamble had paid off. The mission was greenlit. Operation Serpent's Tooth, a deep reconnaissance patrol into enemy territory to identify and mark a high-value target, a rogue general orchestrating the attacks in the region. The team was small, Ghost Lead, Grizz, and Cora, designated as their marksman and observer. Major Devlin fought it tooth and nail. It's a flagrant violation of a dozen protocols, he argued in Riker's briefing tent. Sending an uncertified private, a female no less, on a black op? If this goes wrong, the political fallout will be catastrophic. Your career will be over. Riker leaned over the holographic map, his face illuminated by the pale blue light. The general is hiding in the Al-Qadir mountain range. Standard recon teams have been spotted and eliminated for weeks. They're looking for a team of 6 muscle-bound operators. They are not looking for a small, quiet footprint. They are not looking for her. He tapped the icon representing Cora. Her eye for detail, her ability to see what others miss, is our greatest asset. Her rifle is our insurance policy. Defeated, Devlin retreated, his resentment simmering. He saw this as Riker's ultimate act of hubris, and he was determined to see him fail. That evening, he made a coded call to a contact at Central Command, a rival of Riker's. He didn't leak the mission's objective, but he carefully worded up a formal concern about Colonel Riker's unorthodox methods, specifically mentioning the deployment of unqualified personnel on a high-risk assignment. He knew the inquiry would cast a shadow, forcing Riker to be more cautious, perhaps even scrub the mission. It was a political knife, aimed at Riker's authority. He didn't realize he was also painting a target on the backs of the soldiers in the field. The infiltration was seamless. Dropped miles from their target zone, they moved like specters through the harsh, unforgiving landscape. Cora felt a strange sense of peace in the wild silence, a focus she had never known behind a desk. She spotted trail markers others missed, identified potential ambush sites from the flight patterns of birds, and her hearing picked up the faint drone of a distant patrol vehicle long before it was audible to the others. They set up their observation post on a windswept ridge overlooking a fortified compound. For 2 days, they watched, cataloging movements, guard rotations, supply drops. Grizz kept them functional, managing their rations and ensuring they stayed hydrated. On the 3rd day, they saw him. The general. He stepped out onto a balcony, surrounded by his lieutenants. "That's him," Ghost Lead whispered, his binoculars fixed on the target. "Valerius, can you confirm?" Cora was already dialed in, her scope bringing the general's face into sharp relief. The scar above his right eye matched the intelligence photos perfectly. "Confirmed," she breathed. "Target is positive," her finger rested on the trigger. It was a long shot, but makeable. "Stand down, Cora," Ghost Lead ordered. "This is recon only. No engagement unless compromised." Suddenly, Grizz, who was monitoring their encrypted comms link, stiffened. "Sir, we have a problem. There's chatter on a secondary channel. It's our insertion frequency. Someone is broadcasting it." A cold dread washed over them. They had been sold out. Headlights flared to life in the valley below. The compound erupted like a disturbed anthill. The ambush wasn't coming, it was already here. "They're boxing us in." Ghost Lead yelled as bullets began to spark off the rocks around them. "We're compromised. Exfil now." The retreat was a nightmare of fire and motion. They were funneled down a narrow ravine, the only path of escape, but the enemy knew their route. Mortar rounds began to fall, bracketing their position with terrifying accuracy. One landed too close, the explosion throwing Grizz against a rock wall. He cried out, his leg twisting at an unnatural angle. "Grizz is hit!" Cora shouted, scrambling to his side. His femur was shattered. He was dead weight. "Leave me," Grizz gasped, his face pale with shock and pain. "Get the intel out," Ghost Lead grabbed his arm. "Not happening. We all go home or nobody does," but they were pinned down. The enemy was closing in from both ends of the ravine. It was a kill box. Cora looked up at the ravine walls. "Give me cover," she yelled. She slung her rifle and began to climb, finding handholds in the sheer rock face. She was a small target, fast and agile. Bullets ricocheted around her as she ascended. Reaching a small ledge 20 feet up, she unslung her rifle. From this new vantage point, she could see the enemy positions. They weren't expecting a threat from above. She went to work. One shot, and a machine gun nest fell silent. Another, and a mortar team scattered. Her rifle was a hammer, and she brought it down with cold, precise fury. She wasn't just a marksman, she was a tactician. She targeted their leaders, their support weapons, sowing chaos and breaking the momentum of their attack. Down below, Ghost Lead stared in disbelief. She wasn't just saving them, she was single-handedly dismantling a company-sized ambush. He and the other operator used the break in fire to create a makeshift drag for Grizz, pulling him towards the extraction point. Cora provided overwatch, her every shot a carefully calculated move on a deadly chessboard. They made it to the exfil point just as the sun began to set, the rescue helicopter's rotors beating the air into a frenzy. As they were lifted away from the blood-soaked ground, Cora kept her scope trained on the valley below, her face a grim mask of determination. She hadn't fired a single wasted round. Back at the base, the debrief was tense. Riker listened in stony silence as Ghost Lead recounted the ambush, the compromised comms, and Cora's impossible defense. He knew, with sickening certainty, that this was no accident. The leak had come from inside his own command. His eyes fell on Major Devlin, who stood at the back of the room, his face a carefully neutral mask. There was no proof, only the cold, hard logic of betrayal. Devlin had opposed the mission. Devlin had the access and the motive to sabotage it to discredit him. Riker's trust in his command structure was shattered, but his faith in the young private was now forged in unbreakable steel. He walked over to Cora, who was sitting by Griz's bedside in the infirmary. "The intel you gathered is invaluable," he said, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "You saved them all." Cora just nodded, her gaze fixed on her sleeping teammate. "I was just doing my job, sir." "No," Riker corrected her. "You were doing far more. I'm putting together the final strike plan against the General. Your analysis of the compound's defenses will be the cornerstone. But I need more. I need to know what their response patterns will be. I need you to tell me how they think." He was asking her to be more than a sniper. He was asking her to be a strategist. The pieces were moving towards the endgame. A massive offensive, Operation Fallen Sword, was planned to decapitate the enemy leadership, with the General as its primary target. The strategy, designed by Central Command and championed by Major Devlin, was a conventional frontal assault, relying on overwhelming firepower. In the final briefing, Cora stood up. All eyes in the crowded command tent turned to her, a small private amidst a sea of high-ranking officers. "It's a trap," she said, her voice clear and steady. She pointed to a section of the holographic map, a seemingly insignificant network of caves on the flank of the main assault route. "The intel from the ambush shows they use these tunnels. They'll let our main force engage, then hit them from the side. It's the same tactic they used in the ravine, but on a massive scale. You'll be walking into an L-shaped ambush," Devlin sneered. "And this is based on what? The intuition of a private? Our satellite imagery and signal intelligence show nothing, because they're not looking for it," Cora countered, her gaze unwavering. "They expect us to see what they want us to see. I saw it on the ground. I saw how they move." Riker listened, his face grim. He trusted her instincts over all the satellite photos in the world. "She's right," he declared, silencing the room. "The main assault will be a feint. A small strike team will infiltrate through those tunnels and take out the General before the battle even begins." "My team," Devlin was apoplectic. "This is madness. You're risking the entire operation on the guess of an undisciplined clerk." "I'm betting this war on the judgment of a proven warrior," Riker retorted, his voice like cracking stone. The decision was made. Devlin would lead the main assault. Riker would lead Cora and her team into the heart of the Serpent's Den. The battle began at dawn. The thunder of artillery rolled across the valley as Devlin's armored column advanced, just as planned. And just as Cora had predicted, they walked straight into the trap. The mountainside erupted with hidden machine gun nests and anti-tank positions. Devlin's assault ground to a halt, his forces pinned down and taking heavy casualties. His panicked calls for support flooded the comms channels. Miles away, Riker's team moved silently through the dark, damp tunnels. Cora was their guide, her senses on high alert. They bypassed sentries and tripwires, moving deeper into the enemy's sanctuary. They found the command center, a large cavern humming with the electronic glow of monitors and radios, showing the slaughter of Devlin's forces on the screens. In the center of it all stood the General, directing the battle with calm authority. He was the same man she had seen through her scope, the ghost who had started it all. Riker gave the signal. The assault was swift and brutal. The General's elite guard was caught completely by surprise. In the ensuing firefight, Riker was wounded, taking a round to the shoulder. As he fell, the General saw his chance, pulling a sidearm and aiming it directly at the Colonel. But Cora was faster. A single, perfectly placed shot from her rifle echoed through the cavern. The General collapsed, the battle outside and the war inside him ending in the same instant. With their leader gone, the enemy's coordinated defense crumbled. Devlin's forces, saved from annihilation, were able to regroup and push forward. Back at the base, the victory was celebrated, but the accounting had just begun. An investigation into the compromised comms from Serpent's Tooth led directly back to Devlin's unauthorized communication. His political maneuvering had nearly cost them everything. He was stripped of his command, his career ending not with a bang, but with the quiet shame of a court-martial. Weeks later, in a formal ceremony on the main parade ground, Colonel Riker, his arm in a sling, stood before the entire assembled force. "Heroism is not about rank or regulation," he announced, his voice booming across the field. "It is about courage, skill, and the will to act when others hesitate." He called out a name. Private First Class Cora Valerius. Front and center, Cora stepped forward, her dress uniform immaculate. She stood before him, no longer a forgotten clerk, but a living legend. Riker unpinned the silver star from his own uniform and pinned it above the simple quartermaster insignia on her chest. "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are the finest soldier I have ever had the honor to serve with." Standing beside him was Grizz, leaning on a cane but smiling broadly. He gave her a subtle nod, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had shared. As Cora looked out at the sea of faces, she finally understood. She wasn't just living up to her father's legacy, she was building her own. The war was far from over, but she had found her place in it. She was not just a survivor. She was a warrior. A leader. A ghost. And her watch had just begun.